Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to Creative Grandma's channel. Today's crochet tutorial is for the Sunshine and Rainbow Baby Afghan. This Afghan was made using Ice Yarn's natural baby yarn. This Afghan measures 32 by 37 inches, which makes it the perfect size for that new baby. So let me tell you everything you're going to need to make this Afghan today. So for this project today, I used Ice Yarn's Natural Baby, and I cannot say enough good things about this yarn. There's certain yarns that I really do love to use, and this is one of them. It's so very soft. It's a wonderful yarn to work with, great stitch definition. So let me tell you a little bit about the yarn. It is 10% bamboo, 14% cotton, 76% acrylic. It comes in a 100-gram skein, 225 meters. It's classified as a number 2 fine weight yarn, but this is definitely a 3 lightweight DK weight yarn. It's beautiful with a white cotton twist of yarn blended throughout the color of the acrylic, and it's just wonderful to work with. It's made in Turkey, and then here are the international symbols for the yarn. I think someone told me this is do not bleach. You can wash 30 degrees, so cold water wash, and do not iron. So I'm not sure what they do about the dryer, but most of the time when I work with a yarn that's mostly acrylic, I do throw them in the washer and dryer. Now let me tell you what you're going to need to make this baby Afghan. Now I did have one problem with the yarn. I purchased it, I loved the colors, and when I ordered it in the second time, it come in this real light pink. Now they do have a brighter pink called candy pink, I believe. So I'm really not sure if I accidentally ordered the wrong color. Not sure what happened, but in the video I am crocheting the blanket, so I just wanted you to see what the yarn looks like if you get this color. So I don't want you to be disappointed because I'm not sure what happened with that pink, but this is the baby pink with the cream, and when you lay it on there you can see the pink still looks lovely with the colors. These are just a little bit brighter. So check out that other pink, see which pink you might like. If you're ordering off of Ice's Yarns website, you may want to pick that brighter color if you don't like this light pink. So again, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So for this Afghan today, again, we're using the Natural Baby. You're going to need 4 skeins of the white cream in color number FNT2 67076. So 4 skeins of the white cream. You're going to need 1 skein of the baby pink with cream, and that is color number FNT2 67087, and this again is a little different color than this, so you might want to check out those other colors of pink if you're ordering offline. You're also going to need 1 skein of the mint green cream, and this is color number FNT2 67090. 1 skein of baby blue cream, and this is color number FNT2 67092. And then the last color, you're going to need baby yellow with cream, and this is color number FNT2 67080. Now the yellow, it only took 1 skein to do the Afghan with the accents and putting the yellow border on, but I wanted to show you that this is all the yarn I had left over. So it depends. If you're a really loose crocheter, depending how you crochet, you may run out of yarn right at the end of your Afghan. So it's up to you whether you want to purchase that extra skein of yellow just to make sure that you have enough to finish that Afghan. You're also going to need a size H8 or 5mm crochet hook to make this Afghan. So that is what you need to start today's project. Now, if you're using a different yarn, then make sure that you're using a number 3 lightweight DK weight yarn. So let's go ahead and let's get this project started. To begin our project, I already have my white yarn attached to my hook, and again I'm using the white cream, and I'm using a size H8 or 5mm crochet hook. We're going to begin and we're going to chain 111. You're going to yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, and this creates your first chain. The loop on your hook does not count as a chain. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Continue until you have a chain with 111 chains, and I'll be back and we'll start row 1. I'm back. I have my chain with 111 chains, and you might want to do a real quick stitch count and make sure you have a total of 111 chains. So now we're ready to begin row 1, and I want to remind everyone my crochet tutorial is using USA crochet terms. We're going to begin and we're going to skip the first chain, insert into that second chain from hook, work a single crochet. Now we're going to start the repeat. So if you need help, you're going to click back on the video to where I say this is the start of the repeat, work until I say this is the end of the repeat, and you're going to work across to within the last chain. So let's begin. Double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and that is the end of the repeat. Very simple repeat for this row. So let's do it a couple more times. Double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain. That is the end of the repeat. Double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and that is the end of the repeat. So let me do it one more time. You're going to double crochet into the next chain and single crochet into the next chain, and that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and work a double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next, double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next. You're going to repeat that across until you get to within the last chain, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of row 1, and when you get done with your last repeat, you're going to have 1 chain remaining. The last repeat was a double crochet and a single crochet. You should have 1 chain, and we're going to single crochet into that very last chain of row 1. So if you're new to crocheting, you might want to put a stitch marker in this very last stitch, and then go back to the beginning of the row, and you're going to put a stitch marker in your very first single crochet. And what that does, it allows you to know where your last stitch is when you're coming back across, and then when you get over here and mark that last stitch, it shows you where your first stitch is when you start the next row. So let's go ahead and begin row 2. We're going to start with the chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip the beginning chain 1, insert into that very first single crochet, and work a single crochet. And remember, I'm going under both of those top 2 loops to work my stitches. Now we're ready to begin our repeat. It's the same repeat as the last row. We're going to double crochet into the next stitch. Again, work under those top 2 loops. Single crochet into the next stitch, and that is the end of the repeat. Again, you're going to double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, And that is the end of the repeat. So let me show you one more time. Double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. So go ahead and repeat that across. Double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Repeat that across until you get to within the last stitch, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of row 2. This is what your work looks like. You can see that little bit of texture running across your Afghan. And when you get to the end of the last repeat, you're still going to have one stitch remaining. So if you're using stitch markers, then you should have a stitch marker in this stitch to know that is your last stitch. So you ended with a single crochet in the last repeat, and now we're going to work one single crochet into that last stitch of the row. So go ahead and work a single crochet. Now I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my white, and when I fasten off, I chain 2. 1, 2, I pull my hook up, pull the yarn out, grab the yarn, pinch, pull down, and it creates a secure knot. And then I'll weave this in later in and out through my stitches so you don't see it. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my next color, and I'll be back and we'll start row 3. The next color I'm using is my pink cream, and you can use whichever color you prefer. Now this is where we fastened off at the end of row 2, and we're going to turn our work. We're going to attach our new color. Again, I have my new color attached with a double knot on my hook. I insert into the top of that first stitch. I go under both of those top 2 loops, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. Now this is my preferred method of securing my new color. You can use whichever method you prefer when you're joining a new color. We're going to begin this row, and we're going to be working half double crochets and half double crochet cross stitches. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to chain 1, and this does not count as a stitch. It just helps give me the height for my first stitch. We're going to half double crochet into this same first stitch. Yarn over, insert into that first stitch, yarn over, and pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. This is how you do a half double crochet stitch. So again, if you're new to crocheting, you're going to place your stitch marker right into the top of this first half double crochet. Now we're going to be doing our half double crochet cross stitches. You're going to skip this next stitch and half double crochet into the next stitch. You're going to bring your hook around to the front of your work and work a half double crochet in this previously skipped stitch. Yarn over, bring your hook to the front of your work, insert into the top of that previously skipped stitch, work your half double crochet. And that is how you make your half double crochet cross stitch. So let's do it again. You're going to skip the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, and then half double crochet back into that previously skipped stitch. And that's all there is to making a half double crochet cross stitch. So let's do it a couple more times. You're going to skip the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the previously skipped stitch. Your cross stitch is made. You're going to skip the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the previously skipped stitch. I'm going to do it one more time, and then you can continue on your own. Skip the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, then half double crochet into that previously skipped stitch. Your crossed half double crochet is made. So go ahead and continue and work your half double crochet cross stitch across to within the last stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of row 3. I'm over at the end of row 3. When you look at your work, you did your last repeat of that half double crochet cross stitch, and you have 1 stitch remaining. When you look at your work, you can see how your cross stitches are going across your Afghan. So let's go ahead and finish this row. Again, you should have a stitch marker in this stitch if you're moving those stitch markers up with each row. We're going to work 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. Remember, go under the top 2 loops of that stitch, work a half double crochet. So now I'm going to fasten off my pink. And I don't carry my yarn up the side because when I need this color again, it's on the opposite side of the Afghan. But you can choose however you crochet, whatever you're more comfortable with, then you can do it your way. So now we're going to switch back to our white. So let me grab my white and I'll be back and we'll start row 4. I have my white attached to my hook, and again I just used a double knot to attach my new color. This is where we fastened off on row 3, and you're just going to turn your work. We're going to join our yarn in the same manner. You're going to insert under the top 2 loops of the first stitch of the row, and when you're working with half double crochet, it almost looks like this is your stitch. You need to turn your work towards you, and your top 2 loops are towards the back side. It's not these 2 in the front, so make sure you're not going under the wrong loops if you're new to crocheting. So again, if you're new to crocheting, make sure you turn that work just towards you a little bit, insert under the top 2 loops, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. And again, it's just a nice secure way of joining your yarn. So for this row, it's going to be a simple single crochet row. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to insert back under the top 2 loops of that first stitch, work a single crochet. Now when you move your stitch marker up, make sure you're putting it in the top of that beginning single crochet and not this beginning chain 1, because this may confuse you with this little bit of extra yarn here when you're coming back across. So move that stitch marker up now, and then you won't have a problem. You're going to single crochet under the top 2 loops of each stitch across to the end of the row. Single crochet into the next stitch, and again remember to turn your work towards you slightly, and you can see those top 2 loops, work a single crochet. So go ahead and continue and work 1 single crochet in each stitch across to the end of the row, and I'll meet you at the end of row 4. I'm over at the end of row 4. I have 1 stitch remaining, and if you're carrying your stitch markers up, you're going to have a stitch marker into this last stitch. And now we're going to work a single crochet into that last stitch. And row 4 is finished. So now I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my white. And with this pattern, if you want to use 2 strands of white, 1 on each side, then you can go ahead and carry that yarn up and you won't have to fasten it off. I just find for me to do the tutorial, it's just so much easier to just fasten off the yarn. But again, it's all in the way you like to crochet. So now I'm going to switch back to the pink. So let me grab my pink and I'll be back and we'll start row 5. I have my next color, which I'm using the pink again, and I already have it attached to my hook using a double knot. Again, you can join your color in whichever method you prefer. So we just fastened off of row 4, so you're going to turn your work, And now we're going to join our pink by going into the top 2 loops of that very first stitch and slip stitch through that stitch and through the loop on your hook. So for row 5, we're just going to repeat what we've done in row 3. We're going to start with the chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to work a half double crochet back into this first stitch, yarn over, insert back into that first stitch, work your half double crochet. Now remember, if you're using stitch markers, bring it up and put it right into the top of this first half double crochet. These stitches here where you join your yarn and that chain 1 may confuse you if you're a new crocheter, so make sure that stitch marker is right into the top of that first stitch. Now we're going to go ahead and work our half double crochet cross stitches across to the last stitch. So let's begin the repeat. You're going to skip the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into that previously skipped stitch, and your half double crochet cross stitch is made. So let's do it again. You're going to skip that next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, then half double crochet into that previously skipped stitch. Your half double crochet cross stitch is made. Now we are having extremely bad winds today, so I'm not sure if that noise is in the background of my video, just terrible high winds. So please excuse all the wind and the rattling and all that noise. I'm so sorry if it's coming through the video. So let's go ahead and do the repeat again. You're going to skip this next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, then you're going to come back and half double crochet into that previously skipped stitch. Your half double crochet cross stitch is made. So let me show you one more time and then you can continue on your own. You're going to skip this next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, then come back and half double crochet into that previously skipped stitch. Your half double crochet cross stitch is made. So go ahead and continue. If you need help, just click back on the video. You're going to work a half double crochet cross stitch across to within the last stitch of row 5, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of row 5. This is what your work should look like, and you're going to have 1 stitch remaining. And again, if you're new to crocheting, sometimes when you join the yarn the way I do, it adds a little extra bulk on the ends of your rows, and it may confuse you of where to put your stitches. So very important you're putting your stitch markers in the first and the last stitch, so when you come across, you're going to know where that last stitch is. This is the last stitch, that was that chain 1, and this is where I join my yarn. So this is not a stitch, and we're not using the chain 1, so this is the last stitch. You're going to half double crochet into the top 2 loops of that last stitch. Work a half double crochet. And that is the end of row 5. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my pink. And now I'm going to grab my white, and I'll be back and we'll start row 6. I have my new color, which is the white, attached to my hook, and I just used a double knot. So now I'm just going to go up and turn my work, and I'm going to join my yarn in the same way I joined the other times. I'm going to insert under the top 2 loops of the first stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch through that first stitch and through the loop on my hook. We're going to begin row 6 with a chain 1. We're going to single crochet back into that same beginning stitch, and then we're going to start our repeat. We're going to double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and that is the end of the repeat, and we're going to repeat that across to within the last stitch. So let's do it a couple more times. Double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. So I'll show you the repeat one more time. Very simple. We did it below. You're going to double crochet into the next stitch and single crochet into the next, and that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and work one double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Repeat that across until you get to the last stitch, and I'll meet you at the last stitch of row 6. I'm over at the end of row 6. I just did my last repeat of a double crochet, single crochet, and I have one stitch remaining. We're going to work one single crochet into the top of that last stitch across. Work a single crochet. So row 6 is finished, and now we're going to go ahead and do row 7, which is the last row of our repeat. So to begin row 7, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. We're going to skip the beginning chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of the first stitch, work a single crochet. Now we're going to start the repeat, same repeat as the last row. We're going to double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and that is the end of the repeat. So let's go ahead and work it a couple more times. Double crochet into the next stitch, again going under both of those top 2 loops of the stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Let's do it again. Double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it one more time. Double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next. So go ahead and repeat that across. You're going to double crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, repeat that across to within the last stitch, and I'll meet you at the last stitch of row 7. I'm over at the end of row 7. I just finished my last repeat of a double crochet, single crochet, and you're going to have one stitch remaining, and we're going to end the row with a single crochet into that last stitch. Work a single crochet. So now we're going to fasten off our white, or if you're carrying your yarn up, you're just going to go ahead, drop your color and join your next color. So row 7 is finished. This is what your Afghan should look like so far, and you can see how the pattern is starting to form. We started with those single double crochet rows. We added our cross double crochet, a single crochet row, we repeated our cross double crochet row, and then we end with that single double crochet stitch pattern. So to continue working on your Afghan, we're going to be repeating row 3 to row 7. So each repeat of the pattern sequence, each section, will start with the colored cross stitch row. That is row 3. So you're working row 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the pattern for this Afghan. So here's the section that we already did in the video. You're over at the end of row 7, and again you're repeating from the cross stitch row up to the end of row 7. So here is the Afghan. Now when you look at the Afghan so far, we're right here at this point. This is the first section of the Afghan. So you worked row 1 to row 7. So to complete the Afghan, we're starting at row 3, and you're going to work row 7, which creates a section. So again, when you look at the pattern, when you start your colored cross stitch row, that's the next section. You're going to work it to the end of the white section of row 7, and then start a new section starting with that row 3 with the cross stitch. Now each section you're going to use the same color twice in that section. So the next section you repeat row 3 through 7, and I used yellow. And then in the next section, row 3 through 7, I used the blue. The next section, row 3 through 7, I used the green, the mint. And then the next section, I used the pink, and I just repeated those colors. I started with pink. You work this pattern, you repeat rows 3 through 7 a total of 20 more times. When you get to the end of, you're going to be ending with the pink section. So you're starting with the pink and you're going to end with the pink. So I know that was a lot of information, so let me go over it one more time very quickly with you. You're going to repeat row 3 through 7 a total of 20 more times. Now if you're making the same specific Afghan and you want to use this many colors, then you would follow the color sequence of the pink, yellow, blue, green, and then we're ending with the pink at the end of the Afghan. Now if you're using different colors or you don't want to use this many colors, then you're just changing your colors when you do the cross stitch rows. And each section I repeated the same color twice. So this is how I made the Afghan. Now if you want to do it differently, that's up to you, but this is the basics. So go ahead and repeat row 3 through row 7 a total of 20 more times. You can alternate the colors the same as I did, with the pink, yellow, blue, green ending with pink, or choose your own color combinations. So go ahead and repeat row 3 through 7 20 more times, and I'll meet you at the end of row 107. I'm over at the end of row 107. I repeated rows 3 through 7 a total of 20 times, and I alternated my colors, and you're ending with a pink section. And then you have those 2 rows of white at the end. So I already fastened off my work. Now, when I originally talked about this Afghan, I was going to do a white border all the way around it because I wanted to keep that color on the inside, but I don't believe I have enough white yarn, because you get 4 skeins in a pack if you order from Ice Yarns. Well, I didn't want to have to put a 5th skein of white on there just to do the border, because you would have to buy 4 skeins of yarn in order just to put the border on. So I believe I have enough yellow for the borders. So I have some of the yellow, blue, and green left over from making the Afghan. So I'm going to go ahead and start the border using this beautiful yellow. Because when you look at the Afghan, if I choose white, what will happen is I started with white, I ended with white. So when I add more white to this border and then I come around, I'm only going to have 1 row of white here, which would make it look a little disproportioned. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this yellow out and use it around my border to give it a really bright, sunny look. So okay, let's get ready and start our border. You fastened off here. This is row 107. You're going to go ahead and turn your work. So I turn my work, and now I'm back over at the beginning of row 107. Now you may want to go ahead and weave in all your ends before you start the border. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'll weave my ends in later. I only have a few ends here. So let me zoom up and we'll get our border started. So again, you turned your work. We're back over to the beginning of row 107. This is the top right hand corner, and we're going right under the top 2 loops of that first stitch. I already have my yellow attached to my hook. So we're going to go right into the top right hand corner stitch, that very first stitch. I already have my yarn attached to my hook. Now you can join your yarn in whichever method you prefer. I'm going to join with a slip stitch through that top of that first stitch and then through the loop on my hook. So for round 1, we're going to do a V-stitch border around the whole entire Afghan. We're going to start with a chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This beginning chain 4 will count as the first double crochet plus a chain 1. You're going to double crochet back into that same first stitch, and remember we're going under both of the top loops of the stitch. So when you look at your work, again, you have that beginning chain 4 and a double crochet, which creates your first V-stitch. So now we're going to go ahead and start the repeat. You're going to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and if you're not sure where your stitches are, just turn your work slightly and you can see the tops of those stitches. So we're going to skip 1, 2 stitches, and we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same stitch, and this creates your V-stitch of a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it a couple more times. You're going to skip the next 2 stitches, double crochet into that next stitch, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same stitch. That is the end of the repeat. Skip 2 stitches, double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same stitch. Your V-stitch is made. Let's do it one more time. Skip 2 stitches, double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same stitch. Again, that is the end of the repeat. So you're going to go ahead and repeat. Skip 2 stitches, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that next stitch, skip 2 stitches, and then work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that next stitch. You're going to work that across until you get to within 4 stitches from the corner. So leave those 4 stitches at the corner unworked, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at my first corner of round 1 of our border. We worked our V-stitch across the top of the Afghan. This is what it looks like. And when you get to your first corner at the top, you're going to have a total of 4 stitches remaining. So we're going to go ahead and skip 3 stitches and work our V-stitch into that very last stitch. So yarn over, skip 3 stitches, insert under the top 2 loops of that last stitch across the top of your Afghan, work a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet all into that same stitch. Now we're going to form our corner, so we're going to chain 2 for the corner, and now we're going to start working down the length of our Afghan. We're going to start by working a V-stitch into the first row end stitch, which will be the very same space as the last double crochet worked. So yarn over, insert into that first row end stitch, the same space as the last double crochet made, work a double crochet, a chain 1, and then work a double crochet back into that first row end stitch. So when you look at your work, we have a V-stitch in the last stitch, We chained 2 for the corner, and then we made a V-stitch into the first row end stitch, which is the same space as that last V-stitch made on the top. So now to begin working down the length, it's going to be worked a little bit differently. We're only skipping 1 row end stitch in between each V-stitch. So let's begin. We're going to skip the next row end stitch, double crochet into the next row end stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that row end stitch. And I just go right into the post of the edge of the Afghan. We're going to skip the next row end stitch, work a double crochet into the next row end stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same row end stitch. And your V-stitch is made. So let's do it a couple more times. You're going to skip the next row end stitch, double crochet into this next row end stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same row end stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. You're going to skip this next row end stitch, double crochet into the next row end stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same space. And that's all there is to working down the length of your Afghan. So go ahead and continue. You're going to skip the next row, work a V-stitch in the next row, skip the next row, work a V-stitch in the next row, and continue down to your next corner, and I'll meet you there. I just worked down my length and I'm at my next corner. So this is what it looks like working down the length. And again, you worked a V-stitch, skipped a row, V-stitch, skipped a row, V-stitch. And when you get to the next corner, we have 2 rows remaining. So instead of going around the post of this last row end stitch, we're going to work the V-stitch, the corner chain 2, and the V-stitch going down the next side, all into the same stitch at the base of this last stitch, or the first chain going across the bottom of the foundation chain. So you're going to yarn over, you're going to skip those last 2 row end stitches, and you're going right into the corner, into the first chain or the base of that last stitch. Now this might be a little tight right here, so you may have to really push your hook through there. So yarn over, take your hook and skip the last 2 rows and go right into the base of that last stitch of that last row. The first chain going across the bottom of the foundation chain, work a double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain. And this completes working down the length. Now we're going to make our corner with the chain 2. And now we're going to work 1 more V-stitch all into that same space. So double crochet back into that same chain, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain. So when you look at your work, again, we made our V-stitch to finish working down the length of our Afghan. We chained 2 for the corner, and then we worked a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and formed our first V-stitch to work across the bottom of our Afghan across that foundation row. To work across the bottom of the foundation row, we're going to repeat what we've done at the top. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches or next 2 chains. So if you're not sure, then just follow your stitches down. So here is your first chain, here's the next chain. You can tell those chains by this loop going across. So we're going to skip 1, 2 chains, work a V-stitch into that next chain. You're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet back into that same chain. So again, if you have trouble figuring out where your chains are, then just follow your stitches down, follow that double crochet, single crochet down to the end of the stitch, and then work into the bottom of that stitch. So let's do it a couple more times. You're going to skip the next 2 chains, 1, 2, double crochet into that next chain, chain 1, double crochet back into that same chain, and your V-stitch is made. You're going to skip the next 2 chain, 1, 2, double crochet into the next chain, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain. So let's do it one more time. You're going to skip the next 2 chain and then double crochet into the next chain, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same chain, and your V-stitch is made. So this is what it's going to look like going across the bottom of the Afghan. So go ahead and continue. Skip the next 2 chain, work a V-stitch into the next chain. Skip the next 2 chain, work a V-stitch in the next chain. Repeat that across until you get to within 4 chains from the corner, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at our next corner. This is the 3rd corner. I just worked around 3 sides and we just worked across the bottom of our Afghan. This is what your work looks like. And when you get to the corner, you're going to see you have 4 chains remaining. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this will curve a little bit, but we're going right into that 4th chain, and we're going to work our V-stitch, the chain 2, and a V-stitch all into that 4th chain. So let's go ahead and begin. You're going to skip 3 chain, work a double crochet into that 4th chain, right into the corner. You're going to chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same space, and you just completed your V-stitch, which completes the bottom of the Afghan. We're going to chain 2 for the corner, and now we're going to place a V-stitch back into the same space to act as the first V-stitch coming down the next side. So double crochet back into that same space, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same space. And again, when you look at your work, you can see how we made our last V-stitch for the bottom, chain 2 for the corner, and then made our V-stitch to start working down our last side of our Afghan. To work down the side of the Afghan, we're going to do the same as we did on the opposite side. So now we're ready to start our repeat, and we're going to be working this the same as we did on the opposite side. So this first V-stitch is worked into the first row end stitch. So we're going to skip this next row end stitch, and we're going to work a double crochet into this next row end stitch. You're going to chain 1, and then work another double crochet into that same row end stitch, and this creates your V-stitch. So let's go ahead and do it a couple more times. You're going to skip the next row end stitch, double crochet into the next row end stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same row end stitch. Your V-stitch is made. So let's do it a couple more times. You're going to skip this next row end stitch, work a V-stitch into the next row end stitch. You're going to double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet into that same row end stitch. You're going to skip the next row and work a V-stitch into the next row end stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. So let's do it one more time. You're going to skip the next row end stitch, work a V-stitch into the next row end stitch, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet into that same row end stitch. So go ahead and continue. You're going to skip the next row, work a V-stitch in the next row end stitch, skip the next row, work a V-stitch into the next row end stitch, skip the next row, work a V-stitch into the next row end stitch, and you're going to repeat that down to the next corner. So when you get to your next corner, before you make your last V-stitch, stop. I'll meet you there and I'll show you how to finish round 1. I'm over at the end of round 1. I just worked down the length of my Afghan and the row end stitches. Now please excuse my ends, I'll weave them in later. So yarn over, skip the last 2 row end stitches, insert right at the base of that first V-stitch, work a double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet back into that same space. So our last V-stitch coming down the length is finished. And now to finish the round, we're going to chain 2 for the corner, and then we're going to join with the slip stitch into the 3rd chain of this beginning chain 4. So count up 1, 2, 3, insert your hook, and slip stitch. So round 1 is finished. So now it's time to begin round 2 of the border. So first we're going to start at the top. Now remember, the corners have a chain 2 and the V-stitches have a chain 1. So we're only working in the chain 1 spaces and the corner chain 2 spaces. So we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into this first chain 1 space of that first V-stitch to start round 2. So go ahead and slip stitch into that first chain 1 space, and we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This beginning chain 3 will count as the first double crochet. We're going to double crochet back into that same chain 1 space, and now we're going to make a picot stitch. You're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, bring your hook back around to the front of your work, insert through the top of the front loop only, and take your hook right into the loop below on the side, just going under 1 strand of yarn, and then yarn over and pull through. Your picot stitch is made. And now we're going to work 1 more double crochet back into that chain 1 space. So our first little group is done. So now we're going to go ahead and start the repeat for the top of the Afghan. Each repeat is going to be worked into the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across to the next corner chain 2 space. So let's begin. Work 2 double crochet into the next chain 1 space of that next V-stitch. That's 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3, and now we're making our picot stitch. Bring your hook around to the front, insert right into that front loop only, top to bottom, and then take your hook right out through the side of that stitch, going under 1 loop, and then slip stitch. Double crochet back into that chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it again. You're working into the chain 1 space of the next V-stitch. Work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. Chain 3. Bring your hook back around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, and then the loop directly below on the side of the stitch, and slip stitch. Double crochet back into that same chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat, and you can see how our pattern is forming. So let's do it again. Find your next V-stitch, and we're working into the chain 1 space. Work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space, 1 and 2. Chain 3. Bring your hook back around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the top front loop of that last stitch made, and then into the loop directly below on the side of the stitch, and slip stitch. Double crochet back into that same chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead, and if you need help, click back on the video. You're going to work 2 double crochet, a picot stitch, and a double crochet into the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across to your next corner chain 2 space. So when you get to the corner, you're going to have a chain 1, your corner chain 2, and a chain 1 in that corner. So work all the way across until you get to this corner chain 2 space, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at my first corner chain 2 space. I worked in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across. This is what your border should look like. So now we're over at our corner chain 2 space, so let's go ahead and work our corner. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. We're going to work a picot stitch, chain 3, and then slip stitch through the front loop and that side loop. Now we're going to work 2 more double crochet back into that same corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. We're going to work a picot stitch, 1, 2, 3. Bring your hook back around, slip stitch through the front top loop, that side loop, and your picot stitch is made. So for the corner, you're working 2 double crochet, a picot, 2 double crochet, and a picot stitch. So now we're going to go ahead and start our sides. Because we have less stitches going in between our V-stitches, we're going to make less stitches in the chain 1 space. So to begin working down the length of our Afghan, again, we're only working into the chain 1 spaces of each V-stitch. So let's find our first V-stitch. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space, 1 and 2. You're going to work your picot stitch, chain 3, bring your hook back around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, and then the loop right below it in the side of that stitch, and slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. Again, we're only working 2 double crochet and a picot stitch. So let's do it again. Find your next V-stitch. You're going to work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space. That's 1 and 2. You're going to picot stitch, chain 3, bring your hook back around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, and then out through the top side loop, and slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. Again, when you look at your work, you can see it's made differently. We have 3 stitches in the top, and we're only putting 2 down the sides. So let's go ahead and do it again. Find your next V-stitch. You're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. You're going to work a picot stitch of chain 3, bring your hook back around, insert from top to bottom through the top front loop, and then right out through the top side of that stitch and slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and you're going to be working 2 double crochet and a picot stitch in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch down your length to your next corner chain 2 space, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at my next corner. I just worked down my length, and we worked 2 double crochet and a picot stitch in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch down to our corner chain 2 space. So remember, when you get to the corner, you're going to have the V-stitch with a chain 1, your corner chain 2, and then another V-stitch with a chain 1. So you're working into that chain 1 space of that corner section with 3 chains, and then the center section is your corner chain 2 space. So let's go ahead and work our corner. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that corner chain 2 space. That's 1 and 2. You're going to work a picot stitch of a chain 3 and then come back around and slip stitch into that top front loop and the side of the stitch. And then we're going to do that one more time. 2 double crochet back into that corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. And then we're going to work our picot stitch, chain 3, bring your hook back to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, out through the side, and then slip stitch. And your corner is made. You have 2 double crochet, a picot stitch, 2 double crochet, and a picot stitch all into that corner chain 2 space. So now we're ready to start working across the bottom of our Afghan, and remember, this is where I said you had to pay special attention. Our stitches are a little further apart, so we're adding an extra stitch in each chain 1 space across to the next corner. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do the same thing that we did on the top. This is our first V-stitch. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space of that V-stitch. That's 1. And 2. You're going to chain 3 and make your picot stitch. Bring your hook around, insert from top to bottom through the top front loop, and then the side of the stitch and slip stitch. Now we're going to add 1 more double crochet back into that chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it again. 2 double crochet into the next chain 1 space of that next V-stitch. That's 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3 for your picot stitch, insert into the top front loop, out through the side of that stitch, and slip stitch. And then add 1 more double crochet back into that chain 1 space. So let's do it one more time. Find your next V-stitch, work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3, bring your hook around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop only, and then out through the side under 1 strand and slip stitch. And now we're going to work 1 more double crochet back into that same chain 1 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and continue. If you need help, click back on the video. You're going to work 2 double crochet, a picot stitch, and 1 double crochet into the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across to your next corner chain 2 space, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at my next corner chain 2 space. We just worked across the bottom of the Afghan. We worked 2 double crochet, a picot stitch, and 1 double crochet into the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across to that corner chain 2 space. So now we're ready to do our corner. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3 and make your picot stitch. Bring your hook around, insert it from top to bottom through that front loop, and then out through the side and slip stitch. And now we're going to do it again into that same chain 2 space. 2 double crochet back into the corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3 and make your picot stitch. Bring your hook to the front of the work, go down from top to bottom through the front loop and then out through the side and slip stitch. Your corner is made. 2 double crochet, a picot, 2 double crochet, and a picot stitch all into that corner chain 2 space. So now we're getting ready to work down the length on the last side, the 4th side of our Afghan. And again, this is where we're going to change our stitches. And instead of working that extra stitch, we're only working 2 double crochet and a picot stitch into the chain 1 space of each V-stitch down to the next corner. So let's go ahead and begin. You're going to find your next V-stitch, work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, all into that same chain 1 space. You're going to make your picot stitch of a chain 3, bring your hook back around, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, out through the side of that stitch, and slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it again. Find your next V-stitch. We're working into the chain 1 space. Work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3, make your picot stitch, bring your hook around to the front, insert from top to bottom through the front loop, and then out through the side, and then slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat, and you can see how the pattern is forming. 2 double crochet and a picot stitch in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch. So let's do it one more time and then you can continue on your own. Find your next V-stitch, work 2 double crochet into that chain 1 space. That's 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3 and make your picot stitch. Bring your hook around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom through the front loop only, and then out through the side of the stitch, and slip stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and continue and work 2 double crochet and a picot stitch in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch across to the next corner, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the last corner. I'm at the end of round 2. I just worked down my length and we worked 2 double crochet and a picot stitch in the chain 1 space of each V-stitch down the length. We're over to our corner and now we're going to finish the round. We're going to work 2 double crochet into this corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. We're going to make our picot stitch of a chain 3, bring your hook around, insert from top to bottom through the front top loop and out through the side, and then slip stitch. We need to do that one more time. 2 double crochet back into that corner chain 2 space, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 3 for the picot stitch. Bring your hook around to the front of your work, insert from top to bottom, and then out through the side of the stitch and slip stitch. So our corner is finished. We work 2 double crochet and a picot, 2 double crochet and a picot stitch all into that corner chain 2 space. So now we're going to come up and join with the slip stitch into the top of that beginning chain 3. Count up 1, 2, 3. Insert into that top chain and slip stitch. So round 2 is finished. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my work. And again, when I fasten off, I chain 2, pull my hook up, pull the yarn out, grab, pinch, pull down, and it creates a secure knot. Now, when I was working this border, I was really getting worried because I was getting down to the last couple yards of my yellow. So this is all I have yet left, just a few yards of yellow. So if you're a real loose crocheter, it might be really tight depending on how long you leave your ends when you cut them off, how loose you crochet. So it's up to you. Now, I did not put an extra skein of yellow in the instructions. This is up to you, whether if that scares you and you want to make sure you have enough yellow for your Afghan, then you might want to purchase an extra skein. But it's several yards, so it's really close. I just wanted to bring that to your attention about the yellow, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting down to maybe the last couple inches of a border or of your pattern and you run out of yarn. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in my ends, and I'll be back and I'll show you the finished Afghan. Our Afghan is finished. This is what the final Afghan looks like. I want to thank everyone for stopping by today and crocheting along with me. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the crochet fun here at Creative Grandma's channel. So until next time, happy crocheting, everyone.